welcome back to my channel. I feel like that's everybody's intro, huh? I was interrupted by my mom, but anyway, I feel like that's everybody's intro. I don't know how to start to my videos. That's the reason why I don't have an intro or an outro, because it's very awkward to do both. But anyway, I decided to do a story time for today, and today's story time is gonna be how I found out about my pregnancy. And she's gonna be in my arms. Unfortunately, I can't put her down because she's falling asleep, and for some reason she just doesn't want to be like away from me. But yeah, let's get into it. So first and foremost, I've been with her dad for about 9 years now, and before I found out I was pregnant, we had been together eight years and a half, and we've never used, like, TMI, we don't really use protection. I've never got birth control, and yeah, so we just, you know. So I think I left, okay, so we had been together for about 8 years and a half during the time I found out I was pregnant. So I remember that last year I started working at a company called Wonderful. I don't know if you guys know about it, Palm or like Fiji Water. They own all of that stuff. So I started working there, and I was making good money, and I would obviously be back and forth shopping and stuff, and I was living like my best life pretty much. So I was doing harvest, and if you guys don't know what that is, it's pretty much 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. You hardly get any days off, and I was working, and so was he. I was borrowing his car to go to work, and that kind of lasted for like 2 months. And then I remember that around that time I was borrowing his car to go to work, and then he decided to go exchange his car for a newer car, and he got like a really like nice, a Palisade, a really nice car. It was it's a Hyundai Palisade. And at that time, I don't know why, but I felt like I didn't want to be with anybody, and it was like a sudden feeling of like I just want to be single and be by myself. So I didn't tell him anything about that. I just, you know, kept it to myself, and we would argue here and there. But finally one day I told him, like, I don't want to be with you, like, you know, it's over. We broke up. We like legitimately broke up, and it was like a tough decision. Once we broke up, it was like, that's kind of where I realized that I didn't want to break up, but I had already told him. So, you know, I remember he would text me, and I would text back sometimes, but we would still argue, and he would ask me like to go to his house and like to talk and stuff, and I didn't want to. And like I said, I was borrowing his car to go to work, so since we broke up, I really didn't have a right to work. And I had a ride with my mom for a couple of days, and I told her like we broke up, and she got really mad at me. She was super upset. But anyway, that happened. So finally I was like, okay, you know what, like I can't be like this. Like I'm gonna need a car for work and for other stuff, so I'm gonna have to buy one. So I had money saved up, and I bought my own car. And that same day he was also texting me. He was being kind of nice. He asked like what I was doing and stuff, and I told him like I came to buy a car because I'm gonna need one for work. And he asked like, where are you? Like, I want to go. And I'm like, I'm not gonna tell you, but yeah, I bought the car. And then that same night he called to ask if I can go to his house to talk to him, and I really didn't want to, because I knew where it was gonna lead. But I ended up going, and he got in the car. We started talking. I'm not gonna get too much into detail because it's not what this video is about, but one thing led to another, and we got back together, and stuff happened, you guys know. But yeah, we got back together, and then this was around October or mid-November. I'm not sure. I can't remember dates and days between, but I just know it was a few days that we had broken up. But I think around November I stopped working, and I started working out. And I remember one day I was like, I was working out, and I do like really intense workouts because I'm the type of person that if I go to the gym and I don't feel like I worked out, if I don't feel tired or sore, then I didn't do a good job. So I remember that day I was working out, and then I had started lifting like heavier weights, and for some reason I felt really dizzy, and it was like suddenly, like I just felt really dizzy, and I was like, why am I, like I kind of got dizzy, and it wasn't something alarming to me, but it was like kind of, it was a little bit scary, I'm not gonna lie. And then I remember after that I moved on to another workout, and I suddenly started to feel like super tired. Like I didn't think much of it. So a month passed by, and I started to, this was around December. It was like super boring. I remember like I would do the gym and stuff, but it wasn't like, I don't know, I wasn't being consistent at this time. And I started to jog around town, and then I remember like I was like one day I was jogging and I was bleeding like out of nowhere, and I'm like, why am I bleeding? Like it can't be my period, because I had already got my period like mid-November. So I was like, why am I bleeding? It was strange, but again I didn't think much of it because my period is really not like regular. So I was like, whatever, it's probably like normal. So it stayed at that, and then I started to, I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but you can do like ride-alongs with the your city police. And a ride-along, pretty much what it is that you shadow the cops. I was doing ride-alongs, and I remember I had gotten my period. It was like going away, so I didn't think I was pregnant, right? But little did I know. So I think I went maybe like 4 times to the police department, and it was like super cold. I was not eating properly, and like I said, I was working out, I was jogging, I was doing all these things that a normal person who was pregnant shouldn't be doing, especially in the first trimester. But I remember the last time that I went to the police department, I think it was first shift, so it was in the day, and it ended around 8 p.m, 6, 7, somewhere around there. So I go home, and then I was like, okay, I had to go pee, so I go pee, and I had this strange pain in my stomach, like my lower stomach, and it went all the way back to my back, my lower back, and it was like a really strange feeling. Like I would push, and it felt like I was stretching something from like my stomach to my back and to my like my rectum, TMI again. But I don't know, it was really strange, and I'm like, why am I feeling this? So I was like, it's gonna go away. So then I get up, and I felt it more. So when I was like standing up, I couldn't stand up all the way because it felt like I was like stretching something in my stomach. So I was like, why do I feel like this? So I texted my boyfriend. He was in Los Angeles with his family because they had came down from another state, and they were like out there, like they went out for like a little trip. So I texted him, and I told him like, I don't feel good, like something in my stomach, like it hurts, and I'm not the type of person to complain about pain and stuff. So when I told him that, he kind of was alarmed, and he's like, well, just wait for me at my house, and I'll be there like in a few hours. And I was like, okay. So I lied down and I went to sleep, and before I went to sleep, I'm like, okay, if it continues to hurt in the morning tomorrow, then I'm gonna go to the hospital. But mind you, I'm not the type of person who goes to a hospital for just any random stuff. Like I don't even go to clinics. Like I hardly ever go to clinics and stuff unless it's like for annual checkups. But I don't really go to hospitals or clinics in general. So this day in the morning, I wake up, and I clearly remember because it was his birthday, and I was like, oh, should I go to the hospital? Because I was feeling pain, and I told him like, I'm still feeling pain, and I don't know why. Like, should I go to the hospital, or I don't know, but it's your birthday, and I don't want you to spend all day in the hospital, because I knew they were gonna keep me for at least 4 hours. And he's like, well, if you feel sick, like I'll take you, and then we'll, you know, like if we take long, well, it doesn't really matter. So I was like, okay, I guess I'm just gonna go to see like what's wrong, to see what they tell me. And in my head, I'm like, it's probably like a hernia or something. That's what I was thinking in my head that it was. So I was like, I was not concerned or alarmed. So I walk into the hospital. I tell them like my abdomen hurts, like my lower stomach hurts, and then the nurse is like, okay, go ahead and have a seat. She asked me a few questions, so finally I sat down, and they called me in pretty fast. Okay, so I walked into this little room. It had like a little crane. I walked in there, and the nurse is asking me questions. She's like, when was your last period? How old are you? Have you been sexually active lately? Like stuff like that, like just normal stuff that they ask you at the doctor. So I answered all her questions, and then at the end she's like, is there a possibility that you may be pregnant? And I'm like, yes. And the reason I said yes is because we don't use protection, and I never know if I'm pregnant or not. So, you know, and then my period is irregular, so I really didn't know. So I told her, like, yes, there's a possibility that I may be pregnant. So she's like, okay. So she's like, go ahead and have a seat. And I went back to the waiting room, and then they called me in, and she had told me they were going to do some lab work and a CT scan and an ultrasound, just to, you know, make sure that everything's okay, or to, you know, find out what was going on. So I wasn't alarmed when she told me about the ultrasound, because I had gotten an ultrasound before, and it wasn't because of pregnancy, it was because of like other health issues. So I wasn't like freaked out or thinking pregnancy. So anyway, I sat there, and then they called me in to draw my blood, and then like a urine sample, and I did that. So I go in there, and I'm sitting down, and then they had like an IV on my arm, and I waited for like a good 2 hours, and nobody would tell me nothing. Like, I didn't know my results, I didn't know nothing. So I'm there waiting, and then there's this other girl who's there too, and she had the same symptoms as I did. And we're like facing each other, but we're like a little bit, maybe like 10 feet apart, but we're like facing each other. It was awkward. So I'm there, and then I closed my eyes, and I was falling asleep. So then finally a nurse comes, and then she's like, she called me by my name, and I'm like, yes. And she's like, okay, so we're gonna do an ultrasound. And I'm like, okay. So I leave my phone, I leave all my stuff, and I walk with her to the ultrasound room. And I'm just like, in my way there, I'm just quiet, and I told her, like, I was like, oh, I hate hospitals, I hate needles, I hate all of this, like the IV in my arm, like it bothers me. And she's like, yeah, people don't know, but it like it bends. And I'm like, oh well, I didn't know, I didn't know, and I didn't want to find out, because like it I don't know, it gives me the chills to like bend in my arm if there's something in my vein. But she took me in, and then we get into the ultrasound room, and oh my god, I'm reliving that moment right now. So I walk in there, and it's super dark. There's just like a little screen, and then obviously the bed, and like a restroom. And she looks at her paper. I walk in first, and she looks at the paper, and then she's like, okay, so this ultrasound is to confirm your pregnancy. And I'm like, my what? Like literally, this is my face. I'm like, my what? And she's like, yeah, you're pregnant. Like, watch, let me show you guys how she got the paper. So she walks in, and she has a paper like this, and she's like, so this ultrasound is to confirm your pregnancy. And I turn and I look at her, and I'm like, my what? And she's like, yeah, you're pregnant. And she goes like this, and I'm like, well, show me, like, what do you mean I'm pregnant? Like, I'm like, I'm just here because of lower pain in my lower stomach. And she's like, yeah, that's probably a symptom of pregnancy. And I'm like, are you freaking? And I asked her for the papers. I'm like, I don't believe you. Like, let me see the papers. So she gives me the papers, and I'm looking through them, and I, honest to God, I don't remember what I saw in those papers, because I blacked out completely. Like, I don't know what happened. Like, my mind went blank. And I'm like, are you freaking serious? I'm pregnant? I didn't, like, so many things went through my mind. It was like the scariest feeling. I wasn't touching the floor at that moment. Like, I was so scared. And I didn't know how to react. I didn't have my phone. Nobody was with me. I was by myself. So I was like, I don't know, like so many things went through my head. So she's like, okay, so have a seat. I'm gonna need you to take off your clothes from like your waist down. And I'm like, okay. So I walk into the restroom, and I'm looking at myself in the mirror, and I look at my stomach, and I'm like, what the, like, I'm pregnant? And I'm looking at my stomach, and I'm like, no, like this, they probably confused my results with the girl in front of me. And I'm like in shock, complete shock, and like in disbelief. So I didn't mention this earlier, but I like the workout clothes that I wear. It's I guess you could, my mom said that she was able to see my stomach a little bit, which it was strange to me, because I was like, okay, I'm working out. I hardly eat like greasy food. Why am I not losing weight from my stomach? Like, you could see like a little lonja, if you know what I mean. So one time, there was this one day I looked at myself in the mirror, and I saw like on my left side, I'm like, why does my stomach look like that from there? Like, it's like a little bit bumpy. Not bumpy, but it was like a little bump. And I'm like, it's uneven from the other side. So I was pressing on it, and I thought like something was medically wrong with me. And I'm like, what's wrong with it? But I mean, there was nothing wrong with it. I was just pregnant. So anyway, I walk into the restroom. I'm looking at myself in the mirror. Finally, I take off my clothes, and then I go and I lay down. And she's like doing the ultrasound, and it had to be vaginal because, you know, it was early on in my pregnancy. She was doing her thing down there, and I was like, I don't know, I don't even know what I was thinking. I started to cry a little bit because I was like, what in the world? Like, I had just lost my dad that year, and so many things were happening, and then I'm like, I'm ending the year finding out that I'm pregnant with my first baby. Like, how I thought that I couldn't get pregnant because like I have a cyst. I have cysts on my right ovary all the way back, and I really thought that I would never be able to get pregnant for some reason. Actually, I don't know why, because it had been so many years and we weren't using protection or like contraception or anything. So I was thinking that I was like infertile for, I don't know, I thought I was infertile. And when I found out that I was pregnant, I was like, what the hell? Like, this, it was a complete shock. So that happened. Finally, like, she gave me my paper, she gave me my results, and then at the time my boyfriend was outside. They didn't let him in because it was the COVID restrictions. So he was outside waiting for me, and then like I was crying. I remember my eyes were super red, and I didn't know how to get in the car like without him noticing that something was wrong. So like I said, it was his birthday that day, and I got in the car. I remember like we were leaving the hospital, and he asked me like, what's wrong? Like, did they give you your results? And I'm like, well, they did some tests, but they told me that they would let me know in about a week through the phone. If not, like, if there's nothing wrong, then just a letter in the mail. And he's like, he believed it. So then I asked him like, can you stop at Target so I can grab some stuff? And in my head, I was like already planning how I was gonna surprise him with the pregnancy news, because he had wanted a baby for like the longest time, and I didn't want to because of school and other stuff. So it was weird that I found out that I was pregnant at his, like, that day of his birthday. But I stopped at Target and I grabbed a little bag of like, it was like a gift bag, and he didn't notice much because I mean, it was his birthday, so he thought I had got him a present. And I did have a present for him, the best gift ever, honestly. So I grabbed the bag, and then I grabbed like a little pair of shoes, some gray ones that I found, and I'll insert a picture or a little video of the little shoes. He still has them, like they're literally in their original packaging. And I put them in the bag. I took it with me, and when we were driving on our way back home, I started crying again because it was like very cold. It was in December. It was cold. It was winter, and then it was gonna be New Year's. Like all these mixed emotions because I was pregnant. And like I said, I had already lost my dad like a few months before I found out that I was pregnant. Well, at the beginning of the year, but to me it felt like it was just, you know, it was really recent. So I started crying, and I don't think he noticed, but like I was thinking, how should I tell them? Like, how am I gonna tell everybody? Like, I was scared. Like, I didn't know how to break it to everyone, because like everybody always knew me as the person who didn't have kids. Like, you just have nieces and nephews, but now you're gonna be a mom. It's like, it's weird. And since I like to work out, like it was gonna be, I was embarrassed, I'm not gonna lie. But we get to his house, and I told his mom, I'm like, si puede venir, like, can you come? And she's like, ¿qué pasó? And she was like, kind of scared. And I'm like, estoy embarazada, like I'm pregnant. And she's like she stayed stuck with the expression of like, she was in shock for like a good 10 seconds. So she was like, she looked at me, she's like, she hugged me, and she was like really, really excited because like it was her first grandbaby from from his side. So she was super excited, and then I was like, I'm like, he doesn't know, so don't tell him. And then his uncles were there from another state. Like I said, they were there. So his uncle, for some reason, he kept on saying, his mom told me, I'm not sure if this is true, but his uncle kept on saying that he had a feeling that someone was pregnant, that he had dreamt a baby twice in a row already. So that he kept on saying, like, someone's pregnant, like there's gonna be a new baby, a new family member. And she kept telling everybody. He didn't tell me, but he told everybody else. So I didn't know this until like later, but he kept on saying that. So when I told his mom, he kept on saying like just little remarks here and there of, like, you know, pregnancy. And I'm like, I would like look at him and I'm like, he was just saying that there was gonna be a new baby, but he wasn't saying it because he knew about my pregnancy. He was just saying it because of the dreams he had been having. But I would tell him to be quiet because I didn't want my boyfriend to find out by him. But anyway, he finally opened his gifts, and I told him, like, open this one, and he didn't want to. We were all there. Like, I'm gonna insert a clip. And I told him, like, open this one, and he's like, no, I don't want to. Like, he didn't want to open his gifts. They were both from me. And I'm like, open this one first. And it was the baby shoes, and he was really embarrassed. He's like, no, I don't want to open them. And I'm like, open them, like, you're gonna like your gift. And everybody's recording, and they're all like, you know, him. I think some people knew that I was pregnant, others didn't. But finally he opened the box, the little bag, and he's like, he looks at me, he shows me the shoes, and he's like, what is this? Like, he's all confused. So he gets the paper, and finally, like, he realizes I'm pregnant. And he was like, he looked at me, and like the happiness that I saw in his face, it was priceless. Like, he was super happy, and I was really sad. You guys can tell in the video that I was like really, like, I was going through a lot of emotions, to be honest. I think that's kind of why I looked a little bit like sad. And yeah, that's kind of how I told him about that. And then I also told my sisters. They found out through FaceTime. My mom found out through the phone as well. But that's kind of how I found out about my pregnancy. And yeah, I was really depressed at the beginning of my pregnancy. I was super depressed. When I found out I was pregnant, I was 6 weeks, I believe, 6 or 7 weeks. And I'm not gonna lie, like, termination, like pregnancy termination went through my mind. It crossed my mind, and I actually asked my sister to go with me to a clinic to have an abortion. And I feel super upset with myself, and I'm mad at myself for thinking that way. But to be honest, like, I don't know, I was going through so many negative thoughts and stuff. It's ridiculous. Like, babies are a blessing, no matter how they're conceived, but they're a blessing. And it's not really their fault that they're being brought into the world. So now that I think about it, I'm like, it's just, I can't forgive myself for that. But I did want a pregnancy, to terminate the pregnancy. And I didn't mention this, but I did have 3 threatened abortions. And the last time that I had a threatened abortion, I was bleeding. The 3 times I was bleeding, and it was like TMI again. It was clots of blood, and I, honest to God, thought that I was having a miscarriage. And I'm not gonna lie, I was happy about it because I didn't want to have a baby. I wasn't happy about my pregnancy. Everybody else was, but I wasn't. I wanted to, like, terminate it. So when I started bleeding, I was like relieved. That's the word. I was relieved that it was a miscarriage, but it wasn't. All 3 times they told me that baby was fine. I just had it was a hemorrhage. But the last time that I had a threatened abortion, before it, I had talked to my sister and I asked her to take me to a clinic to go with me because I don't want to go by myself. And I know that you can have like, it's not as risky to have a pregnancy, to terminate the pregnancy within the first 10 weeks. So I was 6 or 7 weeks. And I told her to go with me to have an abortion, and she was like trying to talk me out of it, and I was like, please don't, like, just if you support me, just support me, or don't tell me nothing at all. Don't try to change my mind because you're just gonna confuse me. And she's like, well, I don't know, like, if you want to, like, I'll go with you, but are you sure you're not gonna feel bad, like, afterwards? Like, you're not gonna feel guilty? So I was like, no, I'm not gonna feel, like, at the time I was like, that's the best solution for me. I'm gonna, like, go back to my normal life. Everything's gonna be okay. I just have to have a, like, an abortion. So that happened, and she's like, well, I don't know, just text me in the morning then if you want to go. So I started to research clinics, and it was super scary, to be really honest. It was really scary because, like, these clinics, like, the reviews and stuff, and like pictures of, you know, the rooms, it was scary. So finally I decided on one of them, and then as soon as I decided on one of those clinics, it was around 5:25 in the morning. I remember I felt like water coming out. So I touched down there, again, TMI. I touched down there and I was like, why is this feels really like tacky, like it doesn't feel like water. So then I look at my hand and it's like a lot of blood. And I was like, oh my God, like this has to be a miscarriage. And I was freaking out because at this time I was like, actually no, this was the second time I had a threatened abortion. So I was like kind of scared because I'm like, it's a threatened abortion, or is it a miscarriage? In my head I was like, it has to be a miscarriage. So I text my boyfriend and I tell him like, hey, I'm leaving, like I think I'm having a miscarriage. And he rushed home, or I think I went to pick him up, and we rushed to the hospital. And I was like praying in my head, I'm like, please Jesus, it's meant to be. If this is a sign that the baby has to be born, then, you know, I'll accept it. So they took me in for an ultrasound, and they took me into the back to get an ultrasound done. And in my head, like I said, I was praying and I was asking God, like, if it's meant to be, then it's meant to be, I'll accept it. So he starts doing the ultrasound, and in my head I'm just like, my mind, I was just with my eyes closed, and he was quiet. I didn't ask him anything, I didn't hear anything. So I was thinking like there was really no way of me knowing if like there was a heartbeat or not, because there was no sound. So finally he's like, okay, he turns the screen and he's like, do you see this right here? It was like a little ball like this tiny, and it was like blinking, and I'm like, yes. And he's like, okay, that's the heart. And in my head, I was like, oh my God, like I'm pregnant, I'm gonna have a baby, like this is it, like that's it, you know, like I'm gonna have a baby and I'm gonna give birth. So he shows me that, and then he's like, and do you see these lines? This is the heart rate. So not the heart rate, this is the heart pulse. So this is like the heart pumping, and you know, there's a baby there. So, you know, the pregnancy was not, it didn't end in a miscarriage. So the baby was still there, everything was good. So he told me like, everything's good, you know, the doctor will talk to you about that later, he'll give you your results and all of that. So yeah, everything was okay, everything was fine. And then we go home, and yeah, I was depressed for another 3 weeks. But I think my third, because I did have 3 threatened abortions, so the third one is when I started to feel really, really scared, because I was maybe 12 weeks. And I had already mentally prepared myself to like accept that I was pregnant. So I was already kind of getting used to being pregnant. And when I started bleeding that night, I started crying, and I told my boyfriend, like, I don't want to lose the baby, like I'm scared, like I don't even know what it is. I was like 4 months actually, 3 or 4 months. Yeah, I was like 3 or 4 months. And I told him, like, I don't want to lose the baby, like I'm really sad, like we don't even know what it is, and like I don't want to lose the baby. I was super scared. So he started like, he hugged me, he's like, no, it's okay, like you're not gonna lose the baby, you're gonna be fine. And I didn't go to the hospital that time, but I did have 3 threatened abortions, I clearly remember. But it stopped bleeding, and then I had my OBGYN appointments after that, so they checked the heart rate and everything, and the baby was fine. Everything was good. And yeah, my pregnancy it slowly started to get better, and I started to like accept that I'm gonna be a mom, but it was super hard on me, I'm not gonna lie. And it's okay to feel sad, it's okay to think that you want to have a miscarriage or an abortion, but my best advice would be to not do it. I'm sorry, I'm not for or against it, but I'm not gonna blame you if you have an abortion. I'm not gonna like say negative stuff about people who do have an abortion, but me personally, if you ask me for advice, I would genuinely tell you that you won't regret having your baby. And if worst comes to worst, just, you know, you can give them up for adoption. Like deep down, I wanted a baby, and I wanted a little girl, because like I'm 24 years old, and to me personally, that's already like a good age to have a kid. But I'm about to be 25, and I'm like, everybody else has kids, their kids are already like going to school and stuff, and I don't have a baby. Like I wanted one, so, and I wanted a girl. I really wanted to have a little girl. So I'm like super thankful to my dad and to God that I have a baby, and that she's okay, and that, you know, everything turned out the way that it had to, because I'm the happiest person ever right now with my little girl. And I know that the thoughts I was having at the beginning of my pregnancy, they're just like absurd and very stupid, and I'm honestly never gonna forgive myself for that. But I'm really thankful that I didn't go through with an abortion, because I wouldn't have forgave myself ever. But I love her to death, and I wouldn't change my life and her for nothing in this world. She's literally all that I want, and now I realize that she's all I needed. Like I'm super happy, because ever since I lost my dad, like it has been really tough, but I feel like she brought happiness into my life, and I like don't think about his death as much as I used to, and it's easier to cope with stuff now, like Father's Day and all those stuff. So yeah, like she brought in a lot of happiness into my life, and now I look forward to holidays and all of those stuff. So I'm like really thankful. And yeah, I don't want to make this video longer, but that's my story time. I have a few other things that I would like to say, but I'll probably add those stuff to like another video, because this is already kind of long. But if they would have told me at the end of 2021 that I was gonna feel this much happiness having my little girl, then, you know, that probably would have been super helpful at the beginning of my pregnancy, because I was really going through it. But yeah, guys, that's all I wanted to say for today. I'm gonna change her, because she's kind of like, she woke up, and I know that she's hungry or she peed. I love you, baby. Say bye to everybody. Say bye, guys. Okay, I'm gonna let you guys go now, and I'll see you guys next time on my other story time, or if not, another vlog. I'll see what comes first, whichever comes first. Say bye to everybody. Say bye. Okay, I'm gonna let you guys go now.